In this 1305 video, I'm going to show you how to create the sunburst effect that's described in the week 2 assignment of the class. I've already opened up Photoshop. I know that the graphic that I will be working with later is 900 pixels wide and maybe about 109 pixels tall. So I want to create an image that is maybe just as wide and a little bit taller. And by that I mean a lot taller. In Photoshop, I'm going to create a new file by clicking File, selecting New, letting the document roll its course, and let's just get something quick. I'm not going to use this clipboard. If you see something else, make sure that you're maybe on photo. Default Photoshop size is okay, but since I called out the size that I'm going to use, which is not in inches, it's in pixels. First of all, I'm going to change inches to pixels. I said that it was going to be about 900 pixels wide. I'll type in that value. And for height, I'm going to put in, rather than 109 or even twice as much, maybe 600. Just get a nice rectangle. Resolution will stay at 300 because more than likely the graphic that you're working on should be at 300 dpi. These are very small files, and although these are big numbers, they don't mean much. I'm going to click on Create, and I have my new file. Now, the image that I want is previewed in this picture. It's not so much the hands, the sun, etc. It's the sun rays that are behind. We can apply multiple features and effects to get them to be different colors, transparent, etc. Right now I'm just going to show you how to create those rays. First thing I need is, currently my colors are black and white. My foreground is black, my background is white. I'm going to click on the foreground color and choose a gray. And I have lots of colors, millions of them. The easiest way to get a gray, a dark gray, is to go to the CMYK values. This is not a CMYK image. This is actually an RGB image as indicated in this tab. But if I use the CMYK, because I have direct access to the black, I can say no cyan, which is blue, no magenta, which is red, and no yellow. And my black, I can choose a somewhat dark gray, which maybe could be 50 or 60% black. That gives me a dark enough gray. I have 560. This should be 60. I'll click OK. My foreground color then changes to that black, or rather that dark gray. I'll click on the background color and do the same thing, but choose a lighter gray. I'll tell it to go with maybe 20 and click OK. Now that I see them, these might be a little bit too close to each other in value. I'll click on the foreground color and go from 60 to something a little bit richer. Maybe go up to 75, and that's definitely darker. There's a difference between these two. Now that I have my color selected, I can tell it to do most of the work for me. The work that I definitely need to do is to click on this gradient tool. It may be in a different position than yours. I'm using 2 columns. I clicked on these 2 arrows to give me 2 columns. At 1 column, it would still be the same tool, the gradient tool. We'll go back to 2 because I can see it a little bit better in the screen. And what I'm going to do is make sure that this gradient is selected in this window. If I click this little caret, to be the first one. The first one should be foreground to background. So it'll be from dark gray to light gray. I'm going to click somewhere over here just to make sure that the menu goes away. I'm going to press and hold the Shift key, and while I'm doing that, I'll click above the square and drag down while holding the mouse button, and then let go. Now I have this gradient that goes from dark gray to a lighter gray, and that's what I want. Next thing, I'll go to my filter menu on top and tell it to distort this image by adding a wave. I don't know what your values may be currently. Mine are all kind of messed up all over the place, but on the number of generators that I need, I think I'm okay with just 1 generator for now. The wavelength, I'll tell it to give it a minimum of 100 and a maximum of 100. Oh, I typed in the wrong one. It's 100 and a maximum of 101, so not too much variance. Amplitude, these are bigger numbers or wider range. I say the minimum is 10, the wider, the maximum is 999. And then my scale, I'll leave it 100%. I wonder if, yes, I want to do the amplitude, the minimum go up higher, because I noticed that then these become a little bit darker, and that's what we want. I'm going to make sure that the repeat edge pixels is selected and click OK. Oh, also before you click OK, make sure that the type is square, because the default I think is a sine, and that will be an actual wave. You want square. I'll click OK, and now I have these bars that were drawn for me. I now need to tell it to sort of make a burst out of these lines. With the same filter menu, filter, distort, I'm going to make a different selection here though. I'll click on polar coordinates, and you'll see what the preview looks like. Rectangular to polar will just make all of these things kind of shrink to the middle. Make sure that it's not polar to rectangular, because then you get this mess. Rectangular to polar will give you the effect that we want. I'll click OK. And now I have a black and white version of what we're looking for. What I can do here, I can do multiple things. I can give it a little bit of color by clicking, and I apologize if you can't see the color. I'll describe it to you, but at the bottom there's this tool which is the adjustment layer. It looks like a circle that's separated into two shades of gray, one much lighter than the other. I'll click on that, and the selection that you don't see is the one that you want. It's hue and saturation. When you do that, you get this new menu. And what we need to do then is click on the colorize button, and you'll see that turn from gray into this. And now I can tell it to change the hue. It goes from orange to red and all kinds of colors in between. I'll pick something that's kind of bluey here, and that's pretty much it, except if you notice here I have two layers, because I have my original image, which was black and white basically, and then the new one, which is the hue and saturation. These two are actually two separate images. What I recommend you do, if you want to keep this image and save it later and use it later, save it, file, save as. I'm going to save it on my desktop somewhere where I can find it. It's going to be on this folder called IMED 1305, and I'll just call it my burst PSD. That way the layers will be saved. The layers are fine for now, but I don't have an image to post this to show you how that would happen. Before anything happens though, this needs to be one image. It's going to have these two layers. I'm going to go to the hamburger icon over here on the right and tell it to flatten the image. You can't see it, it's toward the bottom, flatten image, and now I have one layer. I do believe that I can probably go to layer up here and tell it to flatten. Yes, it's also at the bottom and you can't see it, but it's there. Take my word for it. Now the background is just one image. If I were to add this to my banner, which I don't have a banner, but I can create a holder really quick. I can say File, New. I know that the banner's dimensions are 900 by 109. I'll just tell it to create a new photo in pixels. Make it 900 by 109. I'll keep the 300 and tell it to create. There's my banner. And you probably have already added some layers here. I'll add some layers just really quick. I'll click on the text tool, go to black and white, and put in my text, which is basic graphic design. If I could only spell. And now I have two layers. I want to put this, at least for now, in between the background and the text. If I go to the burst, I can tell it to, I'll show you two ways. I can do a select all, that selects the whole thing. Tell it to copy, and that'll copy the whole thing. All the lines, the blue ones and the not so blue ones. And then when I go back to my banner, as long as I'm in between, by that I mean I'm on top of background but below basic graphic design, I'll say edit and paste, and my image will appear. I can press the Command T or Control T button, depending if you're in a PC or a Mac. That's a shortcut for edit and transform. That will select the edges of the image in that layer. You can use then the move tool, which should come up automatically to move it into place. You can also resize it. This is a recent change in Photoshop. Depending on what version you have, if you just click and come down, it will keep everything proportionate. If you want to make it fit, you have to then press the Shift key and hold it as you're doing this. It'll make it smaller, taller, wider, etc. And then there's this. I told you that I would show you a second way. Here I selected everything, so I have the black, or rather the blue and the not so blue. If I were to move this layer, which I'll call here flat burst, on top of basic graphic design, you couldn't see the text. But if I wanted to have something that was transparent in my original image, rather than selecting all like I did here, first I'll deselect, and I'm going to use the magic wand. You might have the quick selection tool open. I'll go back to 1 again. This quick selection tool is the 1, 2, 3, the fourth one from the top. If I click and hold it, the magic wand appears. Magic wand's a very old tool, and it works really good when selecting one color. So I'll click on one of these lines and it actually selects all the blue. And I want to select all the other blues, and while I can just press Shift and do that, I can use the menu Select and tell it to select similar. Basically, when it's already selected, it will select things that look like it. So now only the blue is selected. I can go to the Edit menu, tell it to copy, Control C or Command C, and then when I go back to my banner, I can hide the flat burst and paste, then edit and paste my new burst, which is the old burst, but it's only the blue part. I'll move it around a little bit here so you can tell that it's there, but if I were to move layer 1, which I'll rename to just big burst or something like that, and I move it on top of the text, that you can see its transparency. So 2 ways of doing that. Most importantly, now you know how to make a starburst with little effort. Maybe it will only take you about 10 or 15 minutes.